The Midnight Maid. The Daniels family home looked perfect from the outside. White walls, tall gates, neatly trimmed hedges. The kind of house people admire as they pass by and quietly wish they lived in. But inside that house, something was falling apart. Grace Daniels hadn't slept properly in months. Her newborn baby cried through the nights without reason. Her 6-year-old son Mark woke up screaming from dreams he couldn't explain. And her husband Michael was always working late. The house had everything except peace. One evening, Grace stood in the kitchen, holding a baby bottle she hadn't even warmed yet, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. "I can't do this alone anymore," she whispered. Michael looked up from his laptop. "We should get help. A maid, maybe a nanny." Grace hesitated. "Someone we can trust with the children." "We'll find the right person," he said calmly. 3 days later, she arrived. Her name was Martha. She didn't knock loudly. She didn't smile. She simply stood at the gate when they opened it, as if she had already been there long before anyone noticed. She wore a plain gray dress and carried only a small black bag. "I came for the job," she said softly. Her voice was calm, too calm. Like emotion didn't exist inside it. Grace studied her carefully. "Have you worked with children before?" Martha nodded slowly. "Children like me." That sentence should have meant nothing. But something about the way she said it made Grace's stomach tighten. Still, exhaustion makes decisions easier. And Martha was hired that same day. At first, everything improved. Martha moved through the house like a shadow. Meals appeared on time. Rooms were cleaned perfectly. And strangely, the children changed. Mark stopped waking up at night. The baby slept longer. Even Grace found herself breathing easier. "She's a blessing," Michael said one evening. Grace wanted to agree. But she started noticing small things. Martha never entered a room without pausing first, as if listening to something no one else could hear. And she never looked at mirrors directly. One night, Grace woke up thirsty and walked toward the kitchen. The house was silent. Too silent. Then she heard it. A whisper, coming from upstairs. She stopped. It wasn't one voice. It was several. Slowly, she climbed the stairs. The hallway light flickered once, then stayed dim. At the end of the hallway, she saw Martha. Standing completely still. Facing the wall. "Why is she standing like that at this hour?" Grace whispered. As she stepped closer, Martha's head turned sharply. But her eyes were closed. Her lips moved silently, as if counting something only she could hear. Grace froze. Then Martha opened her eyes. And smiled. "I was praying," she said softly. Grace forced a nod and stepped back. But as she turned away, she heard it clearly now. Martha was not praying. She was counting backward. From something far beyond zero. And that was the first night the house changed. It happened at exactly 12:13 a.m. Grace woke up suddenly, without knowing why. The air felt heavy, like the house was breathing wrong. She walked toward the children's room. The baby monitor crackled. Then went silent. Then a whisper came through it. "They are sleeping inside us." Grace dropped the monitor. It shattered. Michael rushed in. "What happened?" "I heard something," she said, shaking. But the baby was fine. Sleeping peacefully. Too peacefully. The next morning, Mark drew a picture at the breakfast table. A tall woman standing over his bed. Her eyes were black circles. Her mouth stitched shut. Grace frowned. "Who is this supposed to be?" Mark smiled faintly. "That's the lady who comes when you sleep." Grace went cold. "What lady?" "The one Martha talks to at midnight." That night, Grace secretly installed a small camera in the hallway. She told no one. Not even Michael. At 12:10 a.m., nothing happened. At 12:12 a.m., the hallway light flickered. At 12:13 a.m., Martha walked out of her room. But she didn't walk normally. Her feet barely touched the ground. She stopped in front of the children's room and stood still. Then she whispered something. The door unlocked itself. Inside, the baby began crying instantly. Martha entered. And something felt wrong immediately. Her shadow wasn't moving correctly. And behind her on the camera feed, there was something else. A second shape. Tall. Bent. Watching. Grace screamed. Michael rushed in. But when they checked the recording later, Everything after 12:13 a.m. was gone. Not deleted. Just missing. As if it never existed. The next day, Grace tried calling the agency. The number no longer worked. The address didn't exist. That evening, an elderly woman appeared at their gate. She looked at Martha and immediately stepped back. "That one," she said quietly, "should not be inside this house." Grace pulled her inside urgently. "Do you know her?" The woman lowered her voice. She was part of something in her village. Something that was never meant to be touched. And just then, Martha appeared behind them silently. The old woman did not turn around. She was supposed to protect children, she continued. But the ritual failed. Something else came back with her. Grace's throat tightened. What came back? The woman slowly turned. And whispered, "A watcher of midnight." Martha smiled behind them. And the temperature dropped instantly. After that, the house began to change completely. Doors opened on their own. Footsteps echoed in empty rooms. The children began speaking in their sleep. And Mark began refusing to eat unless Martha served the food. Worse, he stopped listening to his parents. One night, Grace tried to take him away. Mark screamed, "You don't understand. She keeps us safe." Safe from what? Grace asked. But deep down, she already knew the answer would not be human. Then came the breaking point. The baby stopped crying. Not because she was calm, but because she wouldn't wake up. Grace panicked. "Martha, what did you do?" Martha looked at her calmly. "She sleeps now." Michael grabbed Martha's arm. And for the first time, she reacted. Her head snapped toward him too fast. Too unnatural. Her voice changed. Deep. Layered. "It is already inside." The lights exploded. The baby monitor screamed static. Mark collapsed, covering his ears. And for a moment, it felt like the walls were whispering back. That night, the old woman returned with a pastor. Salt. Oil. Scripture. Martha stood in the center of the living room, waiting. Almost as if she had been expecting them. The pastor began praying. The air thickened. Candles flickered violently. Martha's body jerked. And then her voice split into two. "You invited me in." The old woman shouted, "Not her. Something wearing her." The children screamed upstairs. Mark's voice echoed. "She doesn't want to leave." The house shook violently. Windows cracked. Then Martha began to rise slightly off the ground. Her mouth opened wider than should have been possible. Something black moved inside her throat. The prayers grew louder. And suddenly, silence. Martha fell. The house went still. The baby cried upstairs again. Normal crying. Human crying. But as they rushed toward the room, Martha whispered one final sentence. "You did not remove me, you only disturbed me." And she smiled. The next morning, she was gone. No doors opened. No footsteps. The family moved out within a week. They never spoke of it again. But silence doesn't stay silent forever. Because in their new home, one night, Grace walked past Mark's room. She stopped. On the wall, freshly drawn in black crayon, were 3 words. And beneath it, a drawing. Of Martha. Standing behind their new house. Smiling. Before bringing anyone into your home to care for your children, do not rely on convenience or surface trust alone. Verify identities properly. Check backgrounds independently. Observe how they behave when you are present. Pay attention to sudden changes in your children. And never ignore repeated patterns of discomfort. Because sometimes, danger doesn't force its way into your home. Sometimes, it is invited in politely. And by the time you realize something is wrong, it may already be watching your children sleep.